Welcome to Champion Stepdad Podcast. We are exploring the unique role of stepdads and how to apply performance psychology skills to become better father figures and role models, building a band of brothers by focusing on empathy and accountability. My name is Neil Wattier. I'm a 16-year stepdad. I'm also a resilience trainer and a performance consultant, encouraging you to join the Champion Stepdad Facebook group, get involved, and grow your band of brothers. Beginning this week, I am welcoming back guests onto the podcast. Over the last several weeks, I was riding solo and focused on topics like emotional awareness, emotional regulation, and last episode was the anger-aggression connection. These are really good topics, and I'm going to continue to explore some of these on some side podcast episodes, but I didn't feel like I was keeping a steady, coherent message. And I definitely was not releasing episodes consistently as I previously promised. So to address my accountability, a schedule of guests will help ensure that I communicate, schedule, produce, and release as planned. It will also give the community an opportunity to hear great stories and advice from people with a wide variety of backgrounds. Now, today, we welcome Shaun Banks. Shaun is a native of San Francisco, currently living in Atlanta, Georgia. He has several great stories to share, and he's doing some really amazing work to educate and support children. Shaun is going to be a repeat guest on the show. I know it. And we've already started side conversations about projects that we're going to partner on. His work supporting children, my work with resilience and performance, mental performance skills. We're going to mesh those together and we're going to do some really amazing things. So I'm really excited to have met Shaun, and he's got some great stuff going on. I'm going to try to get through this real quick so we can get to the episode, but I want to let you know what he's doing. After he was raised in San Francisco, and while he was young, he witnessed severe domestic violence, which rocked his world. On the other side, he experienced the love of a great mother and support and mentorship of a strong stepdad. And through his life has taken his adversity and the trauma that he experienced with the support and love and encouragement that he received to become stronger and want to help other people. Now, Shaun created Camp Warrior King, which helps thousands of youth in the metro Atlanta area gain exposure to activities. He also founded You Can Have It All youth conferences, which went international with an event in Uganda, East Africa, before COVID hit. This led to the recently launched You Can Have It All Youth Motivational Development magazine, which is he's already asked me to contribute to, and I'm really excited to be part of that. He also created Team HoTT SAWCE, which is a group of cartoon characters who teach children how to believe in themselves using fundamental personal development principles. And with that, Team HoTT SAWCE Success Stacks, which are short words and phrases that kids can learn to increase the self-efficacy. So we go back to some of the conversations that I had earlier. Self-confidence is important, but it can't be the focus. Your self-confidence is the result of learning things and putting the thousands of hours into learning a skill, and therefore believing in yourself, believing in yourself as the self-efficacy, believing that you can do it, believing that you have the skills and the abilities. And that's where self-confidence comes from. So I love his emphasis there. He's also the author of 3 books, and then wanted to share that a portion of all the proceeds from his business maintains a You Can Have It All orphanage in Bombo, Uganda, supporting 30 children with shelter, food, and school supplies. Man, I'm blown away. I love this conversation, Shaun, and I clicked right away. And I really hope you enjoy this conversation, and I look forward to having Shaun back on the show again soon. Shaun Banks, thanks a lot for joining me on the Champion Stepdad podcast. How you doing, my man?
Man, I'm doing wonderful, man. Thank you so much for having me.
So you said your friends call you SF.
Yes.
What's up with SF?
Well, it originated from San Francisco Giants. I love the Giants, and when I didn't have facial hair and stuff, my friends always said I looked like Barry Bonds, and so I liked that for a while. And so then I wear SF hats all the time, and it kind of stuck with me. So that
All
was it.
right. So
One of my friends used to joke and always say, "What do you think? You're a battleship or something?" And but that's where it came from. Yeah.
all right. So SF Banks, man, you've got a lot going on, and I gave a quick intro. After the fact, I record that, and that's great and all. But what are you working on? Tell people what you're working on, because I got a whole list of stuff here, and this is all good stuff, man.
Well, man, we're really excited about what we have. The biggest thing is that You Can Have It All Youth Magazine. The magazine is the only motivational magazine of its kind in the world that we've found. And it's all about youth, motivating youth to go after their dreams. So when they open this magazine, I can show you a copy of it here. When they open up this magazine, they're seeing kids doing all kinds of cool things that are their age. And it makes it fun for them, and they can actually interact in it. And so the magazine is something that we're doing that's touching a lot of lives. We have it in multiple languages so that kids around the world can be able to read it. And of course, it's digital so that kids can be able to get it and not have to mess around with shipping.
What's it like producing a physical magazine? I don't remember the last time I picked up and bought a physical magazine. What's that like?
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of coordinating. So it's one of those things that you can't do by yourself. And technology makes it easier now to be able to get different people involved. But it's a whole lot of fun, man. Really enjoying it because we're able to put together things that are really inspiring kids. And so you'd be surprised, especially in the States. People like to get things in the mail. We like to get things in the mail all over the world, but it's easier domestically. And so the kids like to get the magazines in the mail and actual physical copies, and it comes in a really cool bag. But then they also like to be able to read it on their phone. And so it makes it possible for kids to be able to enjoy it right in their cell phone or on their tablet.
So you got the pre-order for November issue. Is this a monthly thing?
It's a quarterly thing where every other month is what we're doing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So which one? So you got November coming out. How many will this make?
This will actually make the second one.
Oh, okay.
This will make the second one. The second one. Yeah, we just started. So we have what's called Camp Warrior King, and it's a youth development camp that exposes kids to activities they normally wouldn't experience during the school year. And so we released the first issue over the summer with the kids, and they loved it. And so now we're going into our holiday and fall season, which we hope to be a success as well.
That's awesome. And I'm looking at the website, and there's a room full of people in here dancing around.
Oh yeah.
What's that all about?
Yeah, that's the youth conference. So that's the You Can Have It All youth conference. And it's all about music and excitement and getting kids inspired and motivated to go after their dreams. And so that clip you see, they were doing what's called a swag and surf. And so the swag and surf, you're kind of just going back and forth, and they're doing this, and it's a song that they're doing, and the kids are bouncing around and they're throwing candy and stuff and having a ball, which makes it hard for them to stay in their seats after a while, but they have a lot of fun.
They definitely look like they're having a good time, man. It looks like something out of Tony Robbins.
Man. Right. Yeah, it's pretty much like that for kids.
That's cool, man. So how did you get going? Because this isn't something that you just turn around and you're like, hey, I'm just going to throw together a magazine at a conference. Like, how do you get to that point?
Well, it started originally. Well, I never originally wanted to work with youth. That's the funny part about it. I never wanted to work with kids. I always wanted to do something in business. And I started serving at my church, and at my church, they would always put me in the youth ministry, which I couldn't stand at the time. And, they were trying to explain to me, I was about in my 20s, hey, this is why we have you here. And even once they told me, I didn't like it, but we saw the need. And so I said, okay, well, I'll go ahead and do it. And it started off with teaching martial arts and self-defense to women and children. That's how it all started. And from there, I really saw a really big need to, develop youth, and went from the martial arts program to the summer camp to the youth conferences to the magazine. And that's how it grew. So it was not my idea. It was never my idea.
So you're out of Atlanta right now. Did this start
That's
in
right.
San Francisco, or and you carry it there, or did it start when you moved to Atlanta?
It started in Atlanta. The actual seed was planted when I was a young kid. So my mom put me in martial arts when I was about 6 years old, just to instill that discipline and respect, and a lot of that. And my aunt and cousin were murdered in a domestic violence situation. And at that point, I was about maybe 15 or 16. And I said, I always wanted to be able to do something to honor them. And so once we moved to Atlanta, and got situated, it started in Atlanta. Everything that, as far as the youth, started in Atlanta.
That's awesome, man. So you talked about, and man, you got a ton in here. It's awesome. You talked about experiencing like extreme domestic violence when you were a child. You opened the I Am Defense Institute that you just talked about to help women and children protect themselves from attackers. Created Camp Warrior King in Atlanta to help people gain exposure to great activities, youth conferences, and you now are doing that as an international, or you were and you're going to get back to it when we can do travel.
Get back to it.
Right. So how did you end up in Uganda?
We ended up in Uganda. With the youth conferences, met a gentleman that was interested in us doing an event there. And at first I thought he was joking, and he realized he was really serious about it. So I said, okay, let's do it. And never been to Uganda before. Put together a group of people that say, yeah, we're going to go, and we'll go with you. And when it was time to go and do the conference, everybody had backed out but me. I was the only one that was still willing to go. And it was a youth conference and crusade in Uganda, East Africa. And so I said, okay, well, God, what do I do? It's like we put all this work in. We made a commitment that we were going to do it, and I don't want to back out. And so, my spirit told me to go. And so I went went there, and there was a ton of people there. We were able to do a lot of work, get a lot of things done in Uganda. We were able to do the conference and the crusade, which was excellent. And that was what started the orphanage there, the You Can Have It All orphanage. And so it was a good testimony, because what I understood is that, when you follow through and finish something, then there's always a blessing for someone else, right? To be able to benefit someone else at the end. And that's what it's about. It's helping other people.
Service to other people, and,
yes, sir.
And I kind of get that, because in what I'm working on, my biggest issue, and I want to say, now the more I think about it, this has probably been my consistency has been my biggest issue all the way back to when I was a kid. Like, gotcha. I was always the one where I'm like, oh, this is cool. And I get halfway through it. I'm like, oh, look at this thing, and my projects don't get me, whether it be my art, my, models or games. Like, I just didn't have the follow through. I didn't have the discipline. And I want to say I even carried that into my military career, that I just, I did some cool stuff, but I definitely held myself back from doing some really, really cool stuff. And so try to struggle through that now. And that's one of the reasons why I reached out to you, is I want to start bringing guests back onto the show, because now I got a schedule, right? I got a schedule people out 4 to 6 weeks. And now I've got, I have to do the show. Like, other people are going to be on the show. Like, I can't just push it off and be like, oh, I'm just not going to do it today. And that doesn't necessarily solve the problem, but at least it creates habits, right? Better habits. And that's what really, we know follow through is, excuse me, follow through is all about habits. Like, your motivation can be weird from day to day. Like, you can be the most motivated person in the world, and one day you're going to wake up unmotivated. It's going to happen. Right. And it's your process that's going to carry you through. And so I'm trying to get better with that. So, and I know it's not just you running around doing this. Like you said, there's got to be other people. So let's start with your family. Introduce us to your family, and how does that affect you and your family and your interaction and their lives?
My family is my foundation. So I have wife, and I have 2 boys, Mason and Ellis. They're 7 and 4. And so they keep me extremely busy on a day-to-day basis. I mean, everything that I pretty much do is centered around what's best for the kids and their schedule, and baseball and swimming and all the stuff they're starting to get into. And so my family is the foundation for what I do. And then my mom actually helps out a lot. Actually, at our summer camp, my mom is the one that's she's actually the cook for hundreds and hundreds of kids every summer. They get all these, great home cooked meals, which I would eat all the time as a kid, which is why I have to work out so much now. And and my sister works in the front office, and I have cousins that do different jobs, and so it's a family business, a family program. And that's what, keeps us going. I think that's why we're able to have the success for kids that we are having, is because, the family's involved.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I some of the stuff that I'm doing is just me. But I've tried to get to a better place where I used to just close the door, right? Close the office door and be like, hey, I'm doing this thing, stop making noise, stuff like that. And then I think it was actually another dad podcast that I listened to where the title of the podcast is work getting in the way of your family, or is family getting in the way of your work, right? And the idea was, and the host that I was listening to even said, he's like, if the kids walk in during the podcast, like that's family. I'm not going to apologize. Family. That's right. Real life. And
right.
I got to the point where, I'll close the door if it's an important meetup, but like the other day, I was recording with somebody, and the kids walked in from school. And I was like, hey guys, what's up? Like, I'm not going to pause, and I'm not going to tell the kids to be quiet because I'm doing a podcast about the kids.
About the kids. Doesn't make any sense. Right. It's about the kids. Right. No, it definitely makes sense. And I mean, it's and the kids want to be involved with what it is that you're doing. What I learned is that they think that it's cool to hear about what you're doing, and then they want to be involved. And so I at first didn't even want to have my kids involved in the magazine. I said, well, that makes sense. Talking about motivating kids, you don't want your own kids in the magazine. So my son Mason does the book reviews, right? And so he's in there reading, talking about the books that he likes and things like that. But I do feel 100% that, especially in this time, we're not working in, corporate offices, we're at home. And so, if your kids come in while you're doing a podcast, I think it's like seasoning, it's like seasoning to a good steak, man, or a good meal. It adds a different kind of flavor. Like, oh, I wasn't expecting that, but that's really cool. This guy really is about his kids, or, this guy actually has kids, or, I think that it's a good change up, as opposed to just being, seeing somebody in a cubicle, or, just being very, rigid.
So where is this taking you? Because it's one thing to build this to where it's at, but you and I we talked the other day, and you're kind of like me, like you got an idea.
Yeah, so man.
Talk to me about that. Talk to me about that vision. Where do you see this going?
I see for the magazine, motivation is a universal language, right? Everybody in the world thrives on motivation. It doesn't matter if you're in the United States, if you're in East Africa, if you're in Europe, if you're in Australia. Motivation is a universal language, and there are people all over the world that are dealing with the same challenges. And so my vision for the magazine is to be able to take it all over the world, for kids to be able to read it and be motivated by the content in it, and to have children all over the world that are contributing to it, that are sending in articles and things, so that someone in Phoenix can hear about what's going on somewhere in maybe Melbourne, Australia, right, and be able to have that connection to kind of make the world smaller. And also with the youth conferences, to be able to take those conferences all over the world. Once we can start being able to get back to in person, being able to go to different places and motivating the youth, because if the youth aren't in a good mental state, then the future is not going to be bright, because like Whitney Houston said, the children are the future. Yeah, man.
Well, and you and I, we talked, like, I feel like you and I had an instant connection.
Yeah.
because we have that focus on kids. And I was the same way for a long time, in that, I'm finishing this degree program, and I just put in an application with the Arizona Diamondbacks baseball team. Like, I'm thinking like major league sports, right? And then suddenly, God smacks me across the face. He's like, no, man, like, you got kids you got over here, you got to work with, like, what? So I get these ideas about, even some of the papers that I have to write, looking at, well, what are the impacts of, emotional regulation on, kids and their activities. And, that's an important subject, because sure, I could go out and I could work with, all-star athletes and, the minor league baseball players that are trying to make it to the bigs. And the probably the one thing that I've heard more than anything else, whether it's resilience training that I've done in the military, or sports performance with, high school athletes or college athletes trying to make it to that next level, is everybody says, man, I wish I would have had this years ago. Because, even just outside of sports, it would have been nice to, manage the stress of, education or stress of my family situation. And I'm like, there's the answer. And then the challenge becomes, how young can we reach? And I think the stronger question, the better question, is how do we reach and capture the attention, of young children? I've worked with kids before. I was a youth, I was in youth ministry when my kids were growing up. I've worked with youth sports before. So I know I have that passion inside of me. It's just, I've worked with an older population, a military population, a sports population for so long. Is how do I refocus that and take the same content, but put it at that level, but then also keep their attention, right? Because, if I do a 3.5 or 4 hour, workshop with a corporate, a company, like, sure, I can keep your attention, but I'm not going to keep a kid's attention for that long with the same material. How to change it. So that's going to be an exciting challenge for you and I to discuss, is how do we take this material, which is really, really good, but we change it so that it's relevant to kids, keeps their attention, and they learn something from it. Because if we could work with young kids and give them the information that they need earlier, we may not have so many screwed up adults.
Exactly. I mean, and that's if, for example, I was watching a football game the other night. I think it was the Rams against the Chargers, maybe. And one of the players had a goals list when he was 9 years old, and they showed it on the game. And the player, he was eating pizza, and he put down, I want to be an NFL football player, and I want to live in LA. And, lo and behold, here it was. He's an NFL football player, and he's living in Los Angeles, right? And so, to answer the question, I believe that we can start as young as children can begin to understand and begin to understand words and concepts. So there are certain things, we have what's called the success stacks. And the success stacks are words and phrases that kids use to be able to build their self-efficacy, right? Their confidence, their self-belief. And once they have a confidence that they can do certain things, then there's nothing that's stopping them. As kids get older, they start to experience failures, right? And they, at first, it's like, I want to be a firefighter, a police officer, an astronaut. And everybody's like, okay, baby, you can do that. And then once they start getting a little older, people start telling them what's not possible, and they start believing it. Then they get out into the real world, and they haven't been equipped with anything to be able to fight that, those negatives that come. I believe they can start at a very young age, 5 years old, 4 years old. They can begin to get those kinds of principles, and it'll make a huge difference in their life.
And I'm glad that you brought up self-efficacy, because I've discussed that in some of my previous episodes.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to have that perspective, because for a long time, I think educators and mental health professionals, well-meaning, right? It was well-intended to have this self-confidence thing. Right. But the problem was, you don't build self-confidence by focusing on self-confidence. right? You don't gain self-confidence by saying, I'm a pretty snowflake. Like, that's not how it works. Like, that's the results. But how do you get there? And I think what we've realized is it's you build confidence by being good at something, or by learning something, right? That growth mindset, the difference between growth and fixed mindset that people talk a lot about is, don't tell your kids, oh, you're so smart. Right. They come, they come home from school when they got 100% on their math homework. Oh, you're so smart. Well, what happens when they come home tomorrow and they got a 70% on their social studies? Are they not smart anymore?
Oh, you're a dummy. Right.
You just might not be good at social studies.
Right.
But no, the idea is, how do you prepare people? And you do that by focusing on their effort, their work ethic, the process. And I tell that even to, the 7 and 9-year-old, I tell them, 9-year-old is Jackson is playing saxophone. If you practice saxophone every day, in a year, you will have 365 practices and you will be better. You're not going to be good, but you're better than you were before. But unless you do those 365 practices, you're never going to get there.
You're never going to get there.
So focusing on effort, focusing on process, and he is building his self-efficacy. And that's being self-efficacy is belief in your belief that you can do it, right? Self-confidence is belief in yourself, but you build the self-confidence because you've practiced 365 days.
There you go.
You now believe you can do it.
There you go.
I think that's a really important distinction. And I think that's really, really important because, you're right. We can't just take kids out of the room and be like, you're all special. Well, yeah, they are. But how do they take that into the world? That doesn't do any good. That's not a skill. Being special isn't a skill.
Right. It's not. It's not at all. And that's why kids that play sports at a younger age or play instruments or have hobbies at a younger age tend to do a lot better than kids that are just at home not doing anything. Because when you say, hey, you're special or you're good, they're like, well, I'm not good at anything. I haven't done anything. There's nothing for me to look at in my life to say, hey, I'm good at this. I did this thing, right? I could play the saxophone, or I'm good at soccer, or I can swim. Children need that as a reference, right? Just like we do. So, and not to get into the Bible, all right, but the Bible talks about Ebenezer's, right? Things in your life where God has done something for you, and you go back to that to say, okay, well, God will do this for me, right? Because he's done it in the past, he'll do it again. Well, it's the same thing with self-efficacy. Hey, I passed this test. Hey, I played this song with my saxophone. I did this swim meet. Okay, maybe I can do this, right? And so self-efficacy comes from effort and work ethic, which is exactly what you said. And if we're not getting kids out trying to do things to get better, then they don't have the confidence. They'll never get to the part that they ultimately need, is that confidence, because they don't have anything in their history to say they've done anything.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. It's the demonstration of, and it's the belief in your ability. And I think that's really, really important. When you look at kids that, you can go as young as, 4, 5, 6 years old, they want to believe that they can do something. And you said it earlier, like we have this tendency, just people in general, to tell people what they can't do. Like, either you can't do that, or we fit you into a box. When you and I were younger, it was this is the way kids learn, and everybody's going to do this, and we know now we know
not the case.
That's not how things work. Right? There's certain kids that were class clowns because they were too smart. There were certain kids that were class clowns. They seemed like, oh, you're, when I was a kid, it was, you're a dumb kid. No, they just, they don't, I don't give a shit about science. I don't want to do science. Like, you need to do science. You need to do math. And I'm like, I just want to fix cars and have fun and play football. And they're like, no, you need to do math. And I'm like, I hate this shit.
Come on. I hate this. Right. You know what? I'm throwing this ball, right? I'm throwing it across the class. Give me a piece of paper, right? And that's what happens. Yeah. And that's what happens because it was so rigid. And kids all learn differently. At camp, for example, you have some kids that will come in and we do summer bridge in the morning. And some of them it's just not their thing to sit down and have to do these workbooks. But if you take them and do a Lego workshop with them, man, they're awesome. They'll go in there, they'll turn on some jazz, and they can do Legos for hours, right? Same kid, very smart, just different interest. And so part of building up children is finding their interest and then being able to cultivate that interest, because there's all kind of different careers out here in the world. Everyone is not going to work in corporate America. Everyone is not going to be a teacher. Everyone's not going to be, a CEO or a president of some company. And nor do we want them all to be. There are so many different jobs and careers that are very important to just keeping, a society together, that if all the kids were the same, it'd be boring. Right. So you want kids that have all these different interests and that learn different.
And I think that kind of clicks in me is also the idea that, so your example, like you take a child into a room and you play them music and you teach them Legos. Well, I mean, what is that? That's creativity. I mean, heck, that could lead everything from, art to engineering, right?
That's right.
But then you can have the conversation as they get older. So you take a young child as they get into like middle school and high school when class matters, and you can say, well, look, maybe you could be an engineer, or maybe you could do this. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means that you design and you build things. Oh, that seems really interesting. I like doing that. Oh, well, in order to do that, you have to be good at math. Like you have to take math classes. Oh, well, then maybe I'm going to work harder at my math then. Like, and that's the kind of flip that people might need, right? So you have to learn how to approach people. You can't just say, you need to do math. Well, why do I need to do math? Like, when am I ever going to do math? And I remember when I was younger, this guy I knew, he kind of used to drive me crazy. And I wouldn't say anything, of course, because I knew it at the time. I don't say I had just graduated high school. And of course, what did I know? But, the guy's in his backyard, and he's a great carpenter, just a backyard carpenter. It wasn't even his job. He just liked building stuff. And I remember sitting here watching him measure stuff and cut stuff and do figures in his head. And he's like, yeah, that algebra shit. That's I'm like, you're doing algebra right now, dummy.
Right. Algebra, geometry, doing it all right there.
I was like, okay, whatever. But, we got to have those conversations to get people interested of, what are you good at? And that's what I love, those kind of conversations too. I'm a huge believer in strength-based everything, strength-based teams, strength-based individuals, strength-based leading. Like how can I find what you're really, really good at and what you're really passionate about, and then fuel that, and then find ways to, like the engineering thing. Well, okay, well, you got to have lots of math to be an engineer. Oh, okay, well, maybe I like math now. Right. If you don't have those conversations, then it's just you're beating your head against the wall.
That's right.
People. So
that's right.
I think that there's definitely something there, and you and I have already said that we're gonna have more conversations to find out where can not if, but like how, and what's the best way for you and I to partner together to figure out what how can we do this? Because resilience skills are important. Mental skills are important. I'm working with, a 7 and a 9-year-old, and they're telling their friends about the things that I'm talking about, right? Whether it's we go to the skate park, or, Jackson's now at, 4th grade, he's doing cross country, and he's talking about, getting to the start line and using my mental skills and calming myself.
Yeah, buddy.
Like, boy.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah. That's what gives kids, the edge in life, right? So I wrote a book, Raising Extraordinary Kids, and I cautioned on talking about parenting, because my belief is that it's very difficult, first of all, for someone from the outside to tell someone on the inside how to parent their child, right? Because a parent knows more about their kid than we do. But there are certain skills and things that will help that parent develop their kid how they want them to be. And it's exactly what it is that you're doing, right? Like you said, like now the kids are going and saying, man, I'm gonna get to that start line and I'm gonna get it. It's that gives them the edge, because just that mental toughness, they're on the starting line and they're ready to go. They're ready to eat it up. Well, you got the other kid next to them that doesn't have that. And that kid next to him may have the ability, may have more ability, but they don't have the mental toughness. that mental toughness will carry the other kid through, that even if they don't win that race, they feel good about themselves and they'll keep going and they'll keep trying. I mean, I think you got the nail on the head, man, with what you're doing. I mean, that's exactly it.
Yeah. You know, and the other thing I like to talk about is the idea that just making it through things doesn't mean that you're going to be stronger, better on the other side. You know,
Very
I mean,
true.
we as humans are habit making machines, and there are bad habits as well, right? And it's not always just smoking and drinking. Like, you know, I talked a couple episodes on the podcast ago about the anger aggression connection, and as guys, we're taught that, you know, we're supposed to be aggressive, you know, and if you get mad, just go hit something. You know, we're coming to find out that's actually a really bad idea.
You know?
Man. Just trying to figure out like what can we do, right? And again, it goes back to, I don't want you to beat your head up against the wall. I want you to enjoy your life. So let's figure out how we can simplify this thing, right? Like, it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be super complicated. I don't talk to a 9-year-old about the same things that I talk to about that I would a college athlete or a pro athlete. I don't know. Maybe sometimes I do, because maybe the college athlete didn't receive it.
Didn't get it. Yeah.
Like, wow, this is amazing stuff. And I'm like, actually, it's really not. Like, Jackson's over here killing it.
Right. Exactly. And they didn't get it because everybody doesn't get it. And it's surprising how great the need is for what it is that we're doing. I mean, the need is huge. Because there are so many people that just didn't get it. Their parents were working. I mean, especially when we were growing up, I mean, you know, your parents were working and you pretty much didn't ask a whole lot of questions about things, right? You did what you were told to do. And they're really, I mean, a lot of us were trained to go to school, get a good education, come out and get a good job, right? There was just going to be this, this 30, 40 year career at some job that you worked, and then you retired, and then you went and did all the fun things that you wanted to do in your life. Well, now it's not that way. And some of us never wanted to do that anyway, right? We wanted to have a different perspective and freedom on, with our lives. And so some of us got it, some of us didn't. And so it's the same thing with personal development. Some people got the development like how our kids are getting it, right? But just think about how many kids are not getting it, right? Think about how many kids are not getting that conversation about being resilient or about being accountable or about, hey, sometimes when you finish something, you're not necessarily going to be better on the other side, right? Just that whole dynamic conversation that you're teaching at home right now that a lot of kids don't get until they're 21, 22, or they're 25, or they're 35, or they're 40, they're 45, and then they get it. And it's like, man, if I would have got this when I was 9 or 10 or 11.
Yep. So then the I'm trying to use better words, right? I don't want to call it a problem. I want to call it a challenge, right? So the challenge for people like you and I is, how do we make that happen? Because if I walk out and I start talking to people about mental skills for, military members, we call them tactical athletes, for, baseball players or football players, whether it be high school, college, or pro, people are like, oh, that makes sense. And they're like, well, why can't I do that with, the
cool, German Shepherd.
Oh yeah, that's my baby.
Yeah, man.
But how do we make this happen? Because number one, kids are already busy. Like, people are already packing their schedules full. Kids need downtime, so we can't just throw one more thing at them. It's how are we creative with this? That we approach kids in a way where it's got to be fun. It's got to be entertaining. Right. We're not going to sit them down in assembly and talk to them for 30 minutes because you're going to lose them.
You're going to lose them. Right.
And that's not a generational thing. That was when I was a kid, don't sit down and talk to me. Like, I don't need you to entertain me, but for crying out loud, and this is just so boring. You lost me 5 minutes ago.
5 minutes ago. Yeah, I'm ready to go outside and play, man. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, the education system's realizing that taking away things like PE, music, and recess is a bad idea. I mean, like Mason and Jackson are talking to me, they're like, they get at least 3 recesses every single day.
That's
I'm
right.
Like, hell yeah, that's exactly what they need, because what they're finding is they can sit kids down for half the amount of time, and they will get they'll get twice the information.
Yeah.
Because they're engaged, because they've had a chance to go run and play and have fun. And now they're like, okay, cool, let's do that thing. Whereas, you know, before it was like, no, we can't. Like, we got to take away recess. We got to have this much more and this more math. We got to beat the South Koreans at science. I remember having those conversations and I'm like, this is stupid.
This is stupid. Right. This is stupid. Right. And it is. And when kids, so how do we do it is the exact same way what we're talking about right now. When kids, like when we were growing up, when you knew, okay, you look at the clock, all right, man, just 5 more minutes and we're going to be at recess, right? Then it gives you that push. But when you're not going to have any fun until 4 o'clock and it's 11 o'clock, man, that makes your day very long. And just like people at work, I mean, man, you know, you got to have breaks in between. And it put a lot of pressure on kids to perform. I mean, it take away all the fun. There's no music, there's no PE, you know, there's no recess, there's no socialization. And so then you have all these kids that can't socialize. They can't read, they can't enjoy music, which is definitely something that can improve or you know, or change your mood. And PE, just learning about different sports and activities. So it's definitely a big difference, and I think it's important. And I think that the way that we can do it is pretty much what we're talking about, is setting it up where it's fun and it's short hits, right? It's not a long thing. It's just give them a little bit of information. It's seed planting with kids. It's a lot of seed planting.
Yeah, and I know that with the stuff that I see on your site and the things that we're talking about, there's something there. And yes. I know we've got, like, we don't know what we're gonna do. Yeah. We got the idea, and now we got to figure out how to make that happen. Because I could see this being really cool, and I can still pursue the things that I talk about. I can still work with athletes, and I can still work with military and all, businesses and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
And that doesn't stop me from being able to do these other things, right? It can be part of the process.
It all goes together, Neil. It all goes together, man. It all goes together because it all goes together. The same thing that you're teaching kids, you're teaching adults. It's all the same thing. It's just the anecdotes and the examples change, but the principles are still the same. Perseverance is perseverance, whether you're 10 years old or you're 25 years old. It's just the examples change, right? Perseverance to, a tactical athlete is a lot different. Perseverance to, as far as the story or the example, to a 10-year-old, but it's still the same principle, right? To finish regardless of what it is that you're going through. And I believe that the part of what makes it cool for the kids is when you working with the athletes and, these various professionals, and these professionals now are able to come in and talk to the kids because the kids are looking at those professionals anyway. I mean, you imagine having a successful baseball player tell a kid the importance of persevering or the importance of mental toughness and how that helped them, right? All of a sudden, that kid is locked in. Like, oh, man, this guy's doing that, man. I got to do it, right? So I think that it all goes together. I think that by you working with the athletes and doing that, I don't know exactly. I see it. I think it's beautiful, right? It's like a beautiful thing that's going to come together where you have these athletes and you have these kids and you can fuse that together. All of a sudden, they're kind of all getting the same information and they're talking to the kids, and it's something there. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And there's something to be said with having exposure.
Yeah.
There's a lot of conversation about, things like diversity and inclusion where people identify with people that look like them. Right. But it goes deeper than that too. It's also, we talk about, athletes, and that was always the big thing. Let's bring in the athletes. Well, But, you know, maybe there's some little girl over here that doesn't want to be an athlete. Maybe she wants to be an astronaut. Or there's a little boy over here that's like, you know what, sports are stupid, but I want to play a musical instrument.
Absolutely.
You know, it doesn't have to be one thing. We can expose, we can have athletes, we can have military, we can have business professionals, we can have scientists, you know, but you have to be able to expose people to those kind of things. And I think that's something that I missed when I was a kid, because I remember thinking that when I was a kid, I wanted to be an architectural drafter, you know, because I was good at art. And then I look at the two and I'm like, well, there's some creativity to that, but that would have been a really horrible job for me to sit at a desk and you know, to draw stuff, because my idea of drawing was, you know, the artistic side of it. And so I'm kind of glad that I didn't pursue that, but it's just an example of how I didn't really have any mentors when I was a kid, even up until, you know, a lot of my military career. I didn't have mentors. You know, they talk about having a mentor or having a guide or having a group of people, you know, brothers and stuff like that. Like I had my friends and all, but we were supportive in a friend kind of way. Like there was no mentorship going on there. And it was tough, not having a vision of what I really wanted to do. And even my military career was more of an escape. You know, I walked into a recruiter when I was 20 years old. And I'm like, get me the hell out of here. Like,
get me out of here.
It was like the easiest recruit ever. I could do that.
You're like, sure.
You know, and he gave me some shitty job and he sent me off. And, you know, I was the easiest recruit because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And he was like, well, here, I got all these jobs. And I'm like, just pick one. Get me out of here. You know,
get me out of here.
So that was kind of frustrating in itself, because a lot of my military career was just kind of going with the flow in a job that I didn't really like, because I didn't have any foresight that I probably shouldn't walk into a recruiter and tell them to give me a job.
Right. But the beautiful thing about that is that if you wouldn't have done that, then it's like all the things that came from that like led you right to where you are at this moment, at this time, right now, which I think is a beautiful thing. I mean, just the path and what it is that you're doing is so needed for people, right? You think about there's 7 billion people in this world, and I go to say 99% of them aren't doing the things that you're talking about, right? There's so many people that need to hear what it is that you're doing. And it's like in your stories and everything that's happened, and it's like, here it is. Because especially with going through COVID and all that stuff, man, people need what you have to say and what we're teaching more than ever, because people are lost. They're like, man, what do I do? Right? Do I go back to my job? Do I keep this job? How do I get through this or that? I was talking to someone yesterday that was in Australia, and they were talking about how the violence is bad, domestic violence is bad, drug abuse is bad, and youth suicide is bad. And they were talking about how it's the same way how it is in the United States, just the same issues. And the issues are the same all over the world. And, you know, it's like you said, you know, kids will relate to someone that looks like them. And that look is not necessarily skin as much as it is the image of what that person is doing, right? I mean, the idea of, okay, man, I want to be a guitar player, and then you see somebody like Van Halen play a guitar, you're like, oh, that's my guy, right? Or I want to be a business owner, or I want to be an innovator, and you see someone like a Steve Jobs, and you're like, man, and so it's the idea that person represents, I think attaches is what makes the connection. And so I think you're absolutely right, man.
Yeah,
I do.
I think that's there's a larger conversation that you and I are gonna several conversations you and I are gonna have.
Yeah, you have a lot of them.
So okay, so you've got this thing. You're primarily out of Atlanta, because you're clearly not just in Atlanta,
right?
So if somebody was in Atlanta, how would they connect with you?
If they were to connect with me, the best way to connect with me is either through Instagram, or they can call, or they can email. So my Instagram is sfdreamsbig, and my phone number is 678-408-2053, and it'll come right over. And those are the best ways to get in contact with me, and, to be able to answer any questions, or to, get products, or, to be able to, subscribe to the magazine. That's going to be the best way. Of course, I can go online. So the website is ychiamag.com. I might change that one day. Because I was like, you can have it all. Magazine is so long, but it comes out better. So, but right now it's YCHIA Mag.
So YCIH.
See, that's why we need to change it.
You can have it all. There you go.
You can have it all. There you go.
Have it all mag.com.
Right.
And I'm going to put all these links in the show notes. So if you're curious about it, whether you're watching the video, down below in the comment section, or the about section, if you listen to the podcast, go to the show notes. I've got everything linked in there, as much information as I can pack in. So you're running the Defense Institute. You're talking about Camp Warrior King with the retreats and the conferences, the Youth Development Magazine, which I think is super cool.
Yeah, man.
You mentioned Team HoTT SAWCE, which is the cartoon characters, which is the shirt that you're wearing.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then the stacks, with the success stacks, I think is really cool, because anytime that you can something short that they can just see it, because you can't give people 20 things, right?
Right.
You can't sit down and say, here's 20 things that you need to know, because what are they supposed to focus on, right?
Right.
Even working with athletes, they tell us all the time, you can only give them one thing at a time. Because somebody who's suddenly going to go back, and I use baseball pitchers all the time. I've never been a baseball pitcher, but just imagine being a baseball pitcher. The stress and the information. Like every play is about you.
Every play is about you.
Every play is about you, and every play, rarely does the plays go your way. Especially they talk about the failure rate is so big there. It's just part of their culture. But to be able to have that mindfulness of, I just need to work on this one thing. And so you can't give people a whole bunch of information. It's sometimes that's just difficult to take in. So the idea of these stacks is just, quick words and phrases to help increase their self-efficacy. And I think that's really, really smart. I really like that idea. You mentioned you authored, sorry, words are hard.
Sure.
So 3 books. So Persevere, Overcome, Win is the first one. The second one is Raising Extraordinary Kids.
Yes.
And the third one is Be Unstoppable Living Life.
That's right.
That's awesome. I love it.
That's right.
So I'm going to throw all the information in the book. I'd imagine this is not going to be the end of it. I had a couple people re-up on the podcast. I'm sure you're going to be one of those down the road.
Absolutely.
I want to be able to share the conversations that you and I have, the work that you and I are going to be doing. This podcast, Champion Stepdad, is clearly about stepdads, but every stepdad is still a dad, a spouse, a man.
That's right.
And it's about building community. First of all, the community of the guys getting together, making sure that we have a great space where, built on empathy and accountability. Empathy because being a stepdad's tough. Accountability because I get it. That's tough, but what are we going to do about it?
And I'll say this to that point. Stepdads are dads, and stepdads are critical, and sometimes they catch a lot of flack for things. If it wasn't for my stepdad and watching him with my mother, and watching my brother-in-law, I wouldn't have had firsthand examples of how to treat a woman, how to love a woman, right? It was so important because my dad wasn't there, but it was my stepfather that was there. And I watched how he never raised his voice at my mom. He was the utmost respect. I mean, whatever she needed, it was just an amazing example. And my brother-in-law, the exact same way, just wonderful men. But if it wouldn't have been for my stepdad and watching him all those years, I wouldn't have had a clue, right? So that would have made all these other failures because I didn't have that mentorship. I didn't have that to be able to see oh, okay, well, when she gets to fussing, okay, you just, hey, you just chill out. It's like, okay, or hey, when things get rough, okay, this is what you do, right? And so, man, to any dad that's a stepdad, that you're making a bigger impact than you know. You're making a bigger impact than you know, man, because it definitely changed my life. It helped my life. Matter of fact, the characters and how we design the characters, one of them is designed around my stepfather, and so it really really makes a difference. Yeah, man, I can't wait to talk to you about all that.
What's
Yeah.
his character?
Well, I have a character. His name is Uncle HoTT, right? And so Uncle HoTT is my uncle Virgil. My uncle Virgil, growing up as a kid, was the only man that I saw that was married to my auntie Charlotte, right? So that was another example that I had. And so Uncle HoTT is, we used to call my uncle Virgil, he put hot sauce on everything. So I started calling him Uncle HoTT, right? Uncle Hot Sauce is what I would call him. And so Uncle Hot Sauce is my uncle Virgil. And he's from Trinidad, which my stepfather is from Trinidad. And so that's the combination of those characters. So the Uncle Hot will have my Uncle Virgil was in love with Earth, Wind, and Fire. Growing up, he loved Earth, Wind, and Fire. We have these pictures of him in like all these cool outfits when we were kids. And so the character Hot Sauce is a fusion of my Uncle Virgil and my stepfather with that Trinidadian vibe. And Uncle Hot, the character, created a hot sauce that made him super successful, and that's how he's able to do the stuff he's doing in the cartoon. It's called The Love. Yeah, man.
I love it, man.
Yeah, man.
And I appreciate that, because again, it's when you're trying to build community, you can't fabricate community. People have to feel. If people have to feel something, right?
They do.
And
yeah.
They want to be around people that they can identify with, that they can learn from, that they feel empowered by. And that's one of my favorite emphasis is how do we empower people? Again, I don't want you to be self-confident. I want you to feel self-efficacy so you can build self-confidence.
That's right.
I don't want you to just go out there and make it through stuff. I want you to grow and thrive. And how do you do that? By learning skills and applying skills, no different than the same way we build athletes. Like, you don't get to college by suddenly just showing up one day and be like, oh, I'd like to try this football thing. It just doesn't work that way, because by the time you get to that level, people have been working their asses off for years, and we see people's successes, but we don't necessarily always want to focus on the struggle that they went through. And again, we often grow the most in adversity or through adversity, right?
That's right.
But there's something to be said for preparing people for that. I don't want you to have to go through. If I know that you're going to face stress and adversity, why shouldn't I teach you things like self-talk and gratitude and all these different skills? I can list off all these skills that I can teach you, so that when you get to that point, you have the skill necessary.
That's right.
It doesn't always have to be a tragedy that, and when we talk about military members deploying, they talk about the military members that have the most resilience, whether natural or trained, are the ones that come out better the other side. Even seeing the same graphic things and having horrible experiences, they come back home still more resilient if they were more resilient before they went. Right?
Wow.
So it's not the trauma, it's not the adversity and the stress that makes you a better person. It's the skills that you apply. It's the good habits that you apply, because we know that there are people that come back that aren't strong, that have PTS, that, that build counterproductive coping mechanisms. The stress and adversity doesn't guarantee that you're going to be stronger on the other side. So teach people the skills that they need now so they can make their way through those things, and working with youth is going to be a big bonus to what you and I working together is going to be pretty. It's going to be fun, I'm really excited to see where this.
Yeah, man, it's going to be fun. I want to I appreciate the connection, man, and just being able to talk to you. And this is a lot of fun. And just learning and hearing, and I just really enjoying just talking with you, man, and and vibing with you, as they say. I love it, man. I'm looking forward to everything that we're going to do together. We're going to have a great time.
That's awesome, man. Well,
Yeah.
I'm going to throw everything in the show notes. The links are there. If you want to check out the Team HoTT SAWCE and all the cool shit that SF is doing, man, check it out. And then we'll follow up soon to see, what you and I can do, man. It's going to be exciting.
Do it. What I need to shoot me an email or I'll call you. Once we get off the line, I got a couple ideas I want to shoot at you like right now.
Yeah, let's spin some ideas while it's fresh.
Let's do it. I want to, you put in an email, so I'll call you in just a second. And I got a couple ideas I want to throw your way and see what you think about them. And I need to get out there and we can sit down and have some coffee or whatever.
Yeah.
Hang out,
coffee.
man.
Coffee. We were talking about that before you came on, man.
Yeah, right. Coffee, beer. All right, man. Well, I'm gonna call you in just a second.
Right on, brother.
All right. Thanks so much.
All right.